Man, oh man, I am so glad to have you on the program and to ask you to come today to speak about what is fatherhood for today's black man. Well, what is Father's Day? Because a lot of people, I mean, due to the images that are very pervasive, the negative images, a lot of our brothers and men, they don't know what it is to really be a father. And that's what we do us to put this production together and reach out to you to bring this out. What's going on with that?
Well, assalamu alaikum and peace be unto you, Brother Andreas. It's an honor to be here. And as the New York representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Minister of Mosque number 7 in New York City, that is indeed my great privilege to represent him. And as the host of the Power Hour with Minister Kevin on Power 105.1 every Sunday morning from 7 to 8 a.m. is another extension of my ministry on behalf of the minister to reach out, community affairs, issues and programs, and we're known AKA as the relationship minister from our days with Ed Lover and Moni Love, and have transitioned that into our own program. Now, fatherhood. First of all, there is no singular day for fathers or mothers. The scripture says, honor your father and your mother, that the days in the land which the Lord has given you may be prolonged. The days in the land. So yesterday was Father's Day. Tomorrow will be Father's Day. Today is Mother's Day. Yesterday was Mother's Day. We have to break the pagan commercialism of Father's and Mother's Day. I mean, what did we give our father today? Did we give him a tie and he doesn't even have a suit? Did we give him a card when he really didn't even really raise you properly? Did we spend a day with him and he's not spent time with you? That's the question about fatherhood. Now, clearly we represent all of the good fathers. I believe I'm a good father. I'm married now 21 years. I have 5 children, Brother Andreas, ages 27 to 11. 3 of my children are in college. One of them is a stepson I've raised since he was 6 years of age. He'll graduate with a degree in chemical engineering. My oldest daughter is a third-year student at St. John's, studying to be a physician, 3.9 average. My son is a first-year student at NYIT, 3.8 average, studying business administration. And I got 2 girls that are left, and I have been there with them all of their life.
I don't know my son's grades. He's over there at Fartherhood, but he's doing good because he built the computer and the news thing. So I know he's doing something.
Well, at least you know he's doing something.
Okay.
You know? But fatherhood is based upon furthering your children in knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, refinement, and teaching them not to become a savage in the pursuit of personal happiness. That's fatherhood. And when we become fathers, that means we're responsible for our children, whether they live under our roof or not. We have a responsibility to further them in this life until they can reach an adulthood where they then can take the mantle of life themselves with a good example. Our young girls need examples of fathers so they know what kind of man to look for in their life. Our young boys need example of fathers so they know what kind of man to be to a woman in this life. And all of us need to recognize God our Father because we're created in his image and his bearing of his likeness of taking the human form and manifesting the greatness of God through the human form. And so ultimately every male must have an intimate relationship with Rabbil Alameen, he who is the nourisher unto perfection. That's the first relationship. Do we have a relationship rooted in God? Because if you don't have one rooted in God, then when a female fails you, then you commit suicide and take her with you, as many men are doing today. When you don't want to have one rooted in God, then you're easily to turn to reefer and cocaine or crack substances or heroin, or you turn to excessiveness of sex, and then you find ways to release yourself into a street culture and vernacular. Then you might even join a gang culture. And I'm not talking about grouping together, but the negative culture of doing negative things towards your own people and feeding from some sub-level of your own people when you don't have a good example of fatherhood and connecting with God. I connected with the Creator as a young boy because I love my father and my mother, but I leaned toward my father because he was the strong man. And I asked God if he would take one of my parents, take my mother first and my father. And I had my reasons for that, but he took my father first. And I turned against God, and then he brought me back to favor with him. And that has become my stronghold to be able to do what I have to do until I met the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who's a real man. spiritual teacher and guide to me, and has brought out the true manhood in myself. And now today, I bring out manhood in thousands that we're able to touch and to reach.
Hey. Well, you know, I mean, I've had Dr. Larry on some of the broadcasts here, and she's around the country. Hope you guys get to catch up to her and provide some security sometime for her. That's a concern for that sister. That's what she's bringing out in her dissertation regarding post-traumatic slave syndrome and the way that we fight amongst each other when we have this created system that was created from this white oppression where the female has been put ahead of the man. And I mean, I've gotten so many calls to the program that became heavy on me because what I was trying to bear out, and I got all these phone calls from women saying that they didn't appreciate it, but I was trying to show that throughout our history as a people, and I'm talking about mankind, whenever there was a struggle or a fight for liberation, the men still together to liberate people. Women were not known throughout our history to spill blood for our liberation. So I said that to say that if we were going to truly find liberation, is that going to be spilling their blood for our liberation?
Well, I don't want to disagree with you, but I want to edify your statement. In Islamic history, it was the Muslim women who were the first ones in Algiers and in Mecca and in parts of Africa who went to war first. In other words, some of the men were very timid. They were warriors, but they faced certain insurmountable odds, and it was the women, in fact, who went out in front of them, and the men being shamed by the women taking up the banner to defend their faith caused the men to take the forefront to do their job as they should. And so women in history, and our African history and traditions, have always taken a forefront to be our support and at times to be out front. But women only went out front so that we would take our job to be in front of them, because we, by the nature of God, have been made the stronger species to protect them and to help sustain them in this life if we would do our job. But if we won't, then women have to be mothers and fathers at the same time, and warriors and sisters at the same time.
Is there any way to get these men to wake up? This is why we brought you on this program today. Because this is a news broadcast, and a lot of people have a lot of respect, and you have a lot of credibility, and bringing that out, and as much as your position, your credibility goes without saying. How can we motivate our brothers to, against the odds that they have, continue to persevere?
Believe in them. Stop prejudging young people. I mentor over 600 to 700 young people weekly in the city, and I'm looking to do the same thing here on the island. We prejudge them, Andreas, and because we prejudge our young people, they then don't have faith in us. And so then we are not the number one peer group that they turn to. This is whether it's black children, this is whether they're Latino, Hispanic, even white children. Turn to their groups amongst themselves because they don't believe that the adults are their number one group for them to focus on. And this becomes a problem now, because when the family breaks down and the father's not the number one, the mother's not number one in their life, then they turn to those in the street culture to become their leaders, and they turn to those in the street culture to become those that give them the direction in their life. And when that happens, Andreas, then there's a total breakdown in the family. And I always use my family as a result. My son has never went to be involved in gang activity. Why? Because as his father, the strong man of the house, I'm not going to permit it. His mother doesn't have to worry about doing that because I have been there by the grace of Allah to be the strong one to be there. My daughters still have their virginity, even to this moment. Some don't know what their daughters have, and some do. But I join the ranks of those who do, not because I have put fear in them, but I have put the certain taqwa of God, the fear of God in them, not the fear of daddy, but the presence of God in their father for them to do the right thing. But now I've let them go free. They have choices to do what they want to do. And my daughter says to me, Dad, don't worry about it. Your investment is sure until the right time. Now that's her choice. You see? But I have put that because most young girls have lost their virginity at ages 15, 16, and 17 years of age, willfully. And we have to begin to break that kind of cycle. So young men need to be taught that we believe in them. Young men need to be strengthened with strong male examples, not about who can break a table, not about how many girls you can put on your notch of your belt or how many numbers you got inside of a book. But young men need to be taught what manhood is as the principle of first believing in God as your father, then believing in yourself as a father, yet not having produced children, but you possess knowledge, you possess wisdom, which is the skillful use of knowledge in an intelligent way, and you are always willing to gain the deepest of understanding of this life and understand that you are limited until you learn from others. Once you learn from others, then young men must realize they must teach others in order for their experience to be made complete. We have to believe in our young men and encourage them and lift them to the high heights. And when we don't judge them, they open up to us and they are willing to be taught anything so that they can become the new teachers in this world.
You know what? This is the other thing. Tell us about the Center for Self-Improvement and how people can reach you on this broadcast to help you branch out that mentorship program that you are doing in the city, Freedom Long Island. Let them know how they can reach out.
Well, Center for Self-Improvement Incorporated, I founded that as principles of self-improvement that lead to better self-development. Every Sunday morning on my program, I always say to develop means to grow, to improve means to change. We all need change. See, one thing is true, and to the listening audience, all change is not progress, but all progress is change. So just because you change your zip code does not mean you've made a progressive step in this life. People have left the city, moved to the suburbs, and what was in them in the city is still in them in the suburbs, and so the suburbs become just as bad as living in the city. People leave the suburbs and move somewhere else in the country, and you change your zip code, whether it's North Carolina, Atlanta, or Florida, or Mississippi, but if whatever is still in you is there, then what the scripture says, what the file of the person is not what goes in, but what comes out, then that's a problem. So self-improvement is total change. Self-development only means you mature and you get older. That does not mean you develop character. That does not mean you develop personality. That does not mean you develop dignity. How many stars, entertainers we know have developed themselves in the world with things, but they can't keep a marriage together? Every time you look at a movie star, they're getting divorced. Every time you look at a sports star, they got some kind of scandal. And these are supposed to be the examples of the young people. You look at the basketball star, they can't stand up a strip club. They can't keep moral decency. Wherever you look today, you look at the politicians, they with page boys, or they're doing something else with prostitutes. Everyone has fallen low, so the young male really doesn't have an example. And in the black community, the only example he still has is the pharmaceutical merchant, aka drug dealer. And so that's the elusive life that they're led to. But when strong black men can see, they can see strong men standing up, doing for themselves, producing out of their own mind a new reality that can change the lives of others, and they can be a part of that kind of paradigm, then you'll see young black men embracing entrepreneurship. You'll see young black and Latino embracing international trade and commerce. These are things that we got to talk to them and put into their minds. My son wants business because I put business in his heart. My daughter wants to be a doctor because I told her you need to pick some kind of skill. You're not going to go around here shaking yourself on some pole. Not that that was her desire, but it could be. So I put in them what I wanted to be in them, then let them choose it later on. But you have to first invest in it in them. You have to plant the seed. If a farmer wants crop, you got to plant the seed. You can look at the dirt all day long, but if you don't plant that seed and first irrigate the land to receive the seed, till the land in order to plant that seed, then once you plant it, a shoot goes down and a turn comes up, and then the crop comes, then you have a livelihood. You can have nothing because there's no mystery God. And if you don't get up and go to work for yourself and teach that to young men and women, then we'll never change our condition, the wretched condition that we find ourselves in.
Can we get a applause for that? Wow. You know, a lot of people always ask me, where do I get these accents from? And I bring them out on our program. And there it is. You got it right from the horse's mouth.